They won't tell you this, but they've already decided what you are. It happens in seconds. The way you speak, stand, blink. They listen not to your words, but to the way the room shifts when you enter it or doesn't. And if it doesn't, they know. They know you are harmless. That they can joke with you, ask too much, delay your promotion, touch your shoulder when they speak. That you will smile, clarify, and maybe even apologize for existing too loudly. You think they don't notice, but they do. Everyone does. They know if you're the kind of man who raises his voice or swallows it, if you escalate or absorb, if you strike or stall. In the worst category, the one that makes you invisible, is the man who is nice. Not kind, not composed. Nice, predictable, linear, soft edges, clear motives, no threat. A man whose time can be taken, whose boundaries bend under suggestion, whose silence is not strategy but surrender. This isn't about being cruel. It's about being seen. Because until they register that you could do damage, they will not register you at all. Fear isn't brutality. It's weight. It's the subtle, ambient calculation others perform when they encounter you. What would happen if I disrespected him? What would it cost me? And if the answer is nothing, then your life is already leaking power. Quietly, constantly. You believe you're respected because they like you. You believe your restraint is strength. But it isn't. It's legibility. And legibility is the leash they fasten around your neck when they decide you won't bite. You show your emotions, your patience, your good faith, and call it character. But to them, it's data. They see the whole map. And once they can map you, they can move you. In a room full of loud men, the most powerful is the one who says nothing. Not because he has nothing to say, but because they're afraid of what it might be. He smiles once, nods once, speaks once, and the room adjusts. Not because of what he said, but because of what they felt before he said it. That's what they respect. Not words, not openness. The unprovable suspicion that you might burn the room down if pressed. That you don't need the circle, the vote, the group. That you can disappear and never look back and still win. Not with noise, with outcome. But that's not you, is it? You're the one who over-explains your decisions, who makes jokes to lower tension, who clarifies your intentions so nobody gets the wrong idea. You're the one who believes people misunderstand you, that if you could just explain more clearly, they would finally see your value. But they already see it. That's the problem. They've calculated it. And the number is low. Respect doesn't come from being understood. It comes from being partially concealed. Just enough that they don't know what you'd do if cornered. And that uncertainty, not affection, not agreement, is the engine of authority. You were trained to believe that integrity means transparency. But Machiavelli didn't believe in transparency. He believed in opacity as a defense mechanism. He believed in visible restraint and invisible capacity. The kind of presence that doesn't declare strength but radiates it. The kind that makes someone think twice before speaking your name in a room you're not in. But you think you're earning something by being liked. And you are. You're earning softness, inclusion, harmlessness. They give you a seat, but not a voice. They praise your temperament, but never ask for your judgment. You're the nice guy they always invite and never fear. A steady shadow at the edge of every table. And they know you'll stay there. Because you don't pose a problem. That's how they survive you. By making you safe. And the longer you accept it, the harder it becomes to escape it. You're not in a relationship. You're in a hierarchy. You're not on a team. You're in a system. One that rewards silence and tests strength. One that pushes, slowly, gradually, until it hits a wall or doesn't. And when it doesn't, when you flex and fold instead of resisting, they know. You are manageable. You are programmable. You will never say no without apology. You will never exit without permission. That's why they talk to you the way they do. That's why they speak over you. That's why your respect always comes second to someone louder, colder, or simply more unpredictable. Because you gave them the map, the keys, and the passwords, all in the name of being liked. But being liked is not power. It is the consolation prize. The handout they give you so you don't notice the room you never entered. And Machiavelli knew. If people are not a little afraid of what you might do, then you've already lost. You've seen it in the boardroom. The man who never speaks unless he has to. When he does, People stop scrolling. His sentences are short. His face never flinches. No one interrupts him, not because he demands it, but because no one wants to be on his radar. He walks out and the air is still moving around his absence. You've also seen the other man, the one who's been at the company for 20 years, always early, always helpful, always part of the team. He speaks often, explains, smiles after he talks to check the room. He's been passed over for the last 3 promotions. They say it's politics, timing, restructuring. It's not. It's visibility. He's been seen too much and seen the wrong way. Known as consistent, known as kind, known as safe. This is where the illusion lives, in the belief that safety earns status, that being a good man leads to power, that if you just show up, do the work, avoid conflict, and treat people well, you will be respected. It's the same illusion boys are raised with, and it follows them until it breaks them. Be nice, be useful, be liked. And someday, if you're good enough long enough, the world will recognize it. It won't. You think being dependable is a strength, but dependable quickly becomes predictable. And once you are predictable, you are no longer seen as a force. You are seen as a function. You become like the office printer, always working, rarely acknowledged, only mentioned when something breaks. No one fears the printer. No one promotes the printer. It just sits there, performing, reliable, replaceable. Now step back. Think about your marriage, or the one you lost. How long did you try to please, explain, de-escalate? How often did you soften your tone to avoid another emotional minefield? You thought you were keeping the peace, but what you were doing was slowly disqualifying yourself as a man who could command the room per room. She didn't want control. She wanted to feel your gravity, and you gave her comfort. Soft gestures, emotional transparency, validation. You thought these were virtues. But comfort isn't magnetism. She never doubted your loyalty. She doubted your weight. That's when she started talking to you differently. Sharper, more dismissive. She didn't plan it. It was instinct. Your emotional availability became emotional exposure. And what you thought would bring closeness created decay. The illusion goes deeper. They tell you transparency builds trust. That if you show your full self, your fears, your goals, your pain, people will connect with you more. Maybe. But connection isn't the currency of power. Clarity is. And when they can see everything, they learn how to move you. You gave them your instruction manual and hoped for mercy. What you got was control. They know your triggers now, your soft spots, the values you won't compromise. They will push there. Not immediately. Slowly. Subtly. Until you find yourself saying yes when you mean no, nodding while your jaw clenches, avoiding confrontation, and calling it emotional intelligence. You didn't get weaker. You got mapped. There is no conspiracy, no grand betrayal. It's just a system that feeds on visibility. Every time you explain yourself, every time you try to be understood, every time you expose your thoughts in hopes of being valued, you become more legible. And the more legible you are, the easier it becomes to move you around. Men don't fall because they're too soft. They fall because they don't understand how others see them. You've lived under the illusion that being liked is the first step to being respected. It isn't. It's often the last step before you become invisible. Your father didn't teach you this. His generation carried it too. Work hard. Be reliable. Don't rock the boat. Earn your place. And maybe he kept his job, but he didn't keep his marriage, or his authority, or the respect of the sons who watched him shrink under the weight of quiet compliance. It's not your fault you believe this. They fed it to you before you had teeth. In school, when you were rewarded for being agreeable. In church, when you were praised for being meek. In relationships, where love was offered as a prize for emotional obedience. But the system doesn't reward obedience. It exploits it. It has no interest in your honesty. It needs your legibility. Because once it knows what you'll never do, who you'll never disappoint, what lines you'll never cross, it knows exactly how to trap you. And the worst part? You call this character. You think your silence is maturity. Your patience is strength. Your accommodation is wisdom. But they're not. They're adaptations to a system that only functions if you keep mistaking clarity for integrity. And you'll keep doing it. Until one day, someone newer, louder, colder walks in, says less, reveals nothing, and the room adjusts. Not because they like him, but because they fear what they haven't seen yet. She didn't cry when you left. She didn't scream. She didn't chase. She sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, and said nothing. You said you needed space. You thought it was a move. You thought it would scare her, shift the balance, make her realize you mattered more than she acted. But all it did was give her clarity. She saw what you were trying to do. And for the first time in years, she didn't respond emotionally. She just nodded. That nod cracked something. Because you realized you had no weight. Not anymore. Not in her mind. Not in the house you paid for. Not in the relationship you built. You were no longer a decision maker. You were an option she had outgrown. She wasn't cruel. She was calm. And in that calm, everything you feared became visible. Not the end of love, the end of leverage. The relationship was never built on love. It was built on gravity. Yours. And somewhere along the way, you lost it. You became the man who tried harder. Who explained more. Who initiated every repair. Who bled on command to prove you still felt something. You thought it made you deep. But it made you legible. And now she knows exactly who you are. She can map your every emotional move, predict your every reaction, calculate your every limit. That's why she's not crying. She knows you won't escalate. You won't punish. You won't disappear. You'll retreat for a few days. Maybe stop texting. Then you'll come back, softer, ready to try again. You built the cage. You handed her the key. And now you wonder why the door stays closed. It's not just her. You see it at work too. The way they talk to you in meetings. Like you're solid, dependable, familiar. Not feared. Not listened to. Just acknowledged. The way a piece of office furniture is acknowledged. You have the answers, but they wait for someone else to say them first. Someone colder. Someone harder to read. Someone who walks in 5 minutes late and speaks without checking the temperature of the room. You prepare. You show up. You stay late. And they thank you. But they don't promote you. Because they don't feel you. Machiavelli understood this before you were born. He watched kings fall not from rebellion, but from predictability. From being too good. Too open. Too clear. The ones who ruled longest weren't the ones who shared their hearts. They were the ones who shared just enough to be trusted and no more. He knew that once people feel safe around you, they stop guarding themselves. And when they stop guarding themselves, they stop respecting you. Because respect comes not from familiarity, but from uncertainty. You gave up uncertainty when you gave up silence. You thought communication would save your relationship. It didn't. It just made your strategy visible. You thought transparency would build trust at work. It didn't. It just gave them ammunition. You thought kindness would protect you. It didn't. It just marked you as harmless. And now you're left with a pile of outcomes you didn't want, wrapped in praise you never asked for. You're not hated. You're liked. But liking isn't fear. It's emotional budget dust, a line item that can be erased the moment you cost too much. Machiavelli would call you loyal. And laugh. Because he knew loyalty is only valued when it's not assumed. Your mistake wasn't loving her. It was making that love predictable. Your mistake wasn't doing your job. It was becoming the man who always would. And when you always will, you no longer decide. You obey. That's the collapse, not in your income or your relationship. In your perception. The realization that every strength you were praised for was quietly used against you. That the better you became at serving others, the less they saw you as someone they couldn't afford to lose. Now you sit alone, not because no one needs you, but because no one fears losing you. And you did that. You called it virtue. Machiavelli would call it exposure. The world doesn't run on truth. It runs on perception. It doesn't punish cruelty. It punishes legibility. And you became easy to read. You showed your every line. And now they trace you with a smile. Because they know exactly where to press. Where you'll bend. Where you'll flinch. Where you'll return. But the man they truly fear, he moves in shadow. He says less than necessary. He is not predictable. He is not cold, but unreadable. He's not angry, just not available. He is not cruel, but people watch their tone around him. He doesn't ask for space. He takes it. And when he leaves, they don't wait. They adjust, because he might not come back. And that possibility, that silence, that unknown, is where fear is born. Not violence, not rage, just the quiet refusal to be moved. The slow erasure of access. The absence that leaves a mark. You were never supposed to beg to be seen. You were supposed to disappear and make them feel it. Machiavelli didn't promise justice. He offered tools. He didn't speak of healing. He studied how people move, how they betray, how they submit. He watched men fall not from weakness, but from misreading the room, from assuming virtue mattered more than perception, more than pressure, more than fear. The first shift is this: you stop asking to be understood. The moment you do, you reduce yourself to a thing that needs decoding. And decoded things are controlled. What you must become now is unreadable. This does not mean being mysterious in the cinematic sense. It means removing access. The people around you don't need more of your thoughts. They need fewer of your patterns. You've been training them. Every apology, every detailed explanation, every moment you filled the silence, you taught them how to read you. They adjusted. You didn't. That ends. From now on, ambiguity becomes leverage. You say less, not out of retreat, but as design. If they ask for your opinion, give them a sentence. If they ask how you feel, tell them you're processing. You are not here to confirm their assumptions. You are here to confuse their frameworks. Machiavelli understood that people fear contradiction more than they fear cruelty. A cruel man is legible. A man who shifts, delays, vanishes without warning, that's threat. That's gravity. This is your power now, strategic inconsistency. Not to appear unstable, but to break the rhythm they use to corner you. You are not obligated to clarify. You are not bound to consistency. You are not a public record. The metaphor is simple. A poker game. You've been playing with your cards face up, hoping your transparency would earn fairness. It didn't. It just made everyone else bluff better. They saw your tells. They knew when you were bluffing, when you were desperate, when you'd fold. You were not playing. You were presenting. Now, you hold your hand tight. You don't flinch. You don't justify bets. You don't react when they raise. You let the pot build. You let them guess. That silence is not absence. It's pressure. Let them feel uncomfortable. Let them fill in the gaps. Machiavelli knew the most powerful man is not the one who speaks most. It's the one whose silence creates tension. Not because he's wise, but because no one knows what he's calculating. This isn't detachment. It's construction. You build the new frame. You say no without tone. You leave rooms without explanation. You let people think what they want, because you no longer need to be interpreted correctly. There is no correct, only control. You are not repairing your image. You are removing your profile. You do not need to win arguments. You need to stop offering ammunition. You do not need more trust. You need less exposure. This isn't recovery. It's architecture. You want to reclaim power? Then stop being known. You are no longer the man who texts to check in, who explains why he's distant, who softens the edge of his statement so no one misreads him. You let them misread. You count on it. The more they guess wrong, the more they begin to respect the margin between what they know and what you allow. This margin is power. You no longer react. You respond, if at all. You no longer correct narratives. You watch them spread. Because control isn't achieved through accuracy. It's achieved through opacity. Machiavelli did not write The Prince for good men. He wrote it for effective men. And effectiveness begins when you stop broadcasting your position. You stop defending your dignity. You stop pleading for context. Those are tools of the powerless. You used them when you believed respect came from understanding. It doesn't. Respect comes from limitation. You don't speak your boundaries. You enforce them through absence. You don't outline your standards. You make others feel the cost of failing to meet them. You don't tell her what you need. You disappear when it's not there, without announcement, without tension, without ceremony. Just gone. And when they ask, what happened? You say, noted. That's what Machiavelli handed you. Not peace, not fairness, just this. If you are not willing to be feared, you will be forgotten. You remember the quote now, not as a theory, as a verdict. It is much safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. When you first heard it, it sounded cold, ruthless. You thought it belonged to tyrants, to politicians, to broken men. But now it fits in your mouth like a sentence you've been choking on for years. Not because you wanted to dominate anyone, but because now you finally understand what it costs to be only loved. You thought love would protect you, but it didn't stop her from losing interest. It didn't stop them from promoting someone else. It didn't stop the silence after your best efforts. Because love that isn't anchored in threat is just permission. Permission to take, to drift, to forget. Fear was never violence. It was never loud. It was the quiet sense that losing you might change the weather. That keeping your favor meant stability. That disrespect had consequences, even if they weren't spoken. That's what was missing. Not kindness. Not commitment. Not effort. Wait. Now you move differently. Not as a performer. As a presence. You don't try to repair every misunderstanding. You don't soften your position when it's met with discomfort. You let silence stretch. You watch people adjust to the version of you they can no longer predict. And it doesn't feel like revenge. It feels like air returning to your lungs. This is not power. It's not glory. It's not status. It's subtraction. The removal of everything that once made you easier to carry. You are not more loved. You are less accessible. And that's the shift. You don't chase alignment. You measure tension. You don't try to be understood. You control visibility. You don't worry about being enough. You let people wonder if you care. This doesn't make you happy. It makes you unassailable. And maybe that's not what you wanted when this began. Maybe you still miss softness. Maybe there's a part of you, the boy who believed goodness was safety, that still wants to be recognized. But that boy was built by liars. He was taught that honesty would be rewarded, that openness would be respected, that love, given purely, would come back the same way. And now you know what Machiavelli knew. Appearances rule behavior. Intentions rule nothing. The man who is feared isn't hated. He is guarded. The man who is loved without fear, he is forgotten in stages. Praised, then ignored, then replaced. Now you live with that. And the silence is different. Not peace. Not calm. Awareness. Every room you walk into, you're calculating. Not to manipulate, to survive without being harvested. You watch how they speak to each other. How they turn when you don't fill the air. How they wait longer now before asking for more of you. How your distance makes them cautious. That's not cruelty. That's consequence. So now ask yourself, what part of your life still runs on the illusion that being understood is enough? Where do you still explain? Where do you still hope someone will notice what you've given? Where are you still waiting to be rewarded for being harmless? Because that's where you've been trained. And that's where you're still losing. Comment below. Not for validation. Not for debate. Just answer this. Where in your life have you been loved but never feared, and what did it cost you?